My second NDE, I was 25, and I had two little boys, and then we were in the process of adopting my nephew. They're all stair steps, like 4, 5, 6 years old. And I was pregnant for twins, and I started having pain. And I kept calling my doctor saying something's wrong. I think it's a dual pregnancy. He says, no, it's not. Because 20, my ex had made me get my tubes tied. And I begged him to get them reversed when I found out it was possible. And I had just had that reversal. And there was a small chance of dual pregnancy with that. And with this pain, I thought that must be what it is. And doctors know it's not. So the pain got so bad by the end of the week, my husband took me to the hospital. And on the way there, the pain faded in such a strange way. I knew instinctively I was dying. And I said a prayer to God, don't let me die right now. I didn't want my husband to see his wife collapse over dead. I thought he would pull over along the highway and be so upset. And I pictured cars coming, and I thought, if I'm going to die, let me get to the hospital. Don't do that to him. We got to the hospital. He got me in there, and I said, I think it's a dual pregnancy. I don't know if I'm going to throw up or pass out. So they put me in a wheelchair, had him stay and sign papers, and they just started pushing me down the hallway, and I died. Well, how I died was I was sitting there in a wheelchair as they just started to push me, and my hands was on the armrest of the wheelchair, and they had put a blue bowl in my lap in case I vomited, and I wanted to get that blue bowl. I felt sick, and I thought, I'm about to throw up. And I noticed I had lost contact with my body. I could not tell my hand to lift a finger. I thought, I lost contact with my body. I wanted to get that bowl. When I didn't want to throw up down myself. I lost contact. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. I'm not going to throw up. I'm going to pass out. I'm going to pass out right now. And my chin hit my chest. Suddenly, I am in a tunnel, and I am shot like a rocket up through space. It's transparent, like I could see through it, like I could tell I was whizzing past the galaxy, and every now and then there'd be a knock, and I thought, another dimension. Like, I felt like whatever this was wanted me to feel like you just went so far away, because that's the feeling I had. And so there's this loud, bumpy ride, and all of a sudden, you snap your fingers that quick. It's the total opposite. I'm in bright white light. It's perfectly still, perfectly quiet. I look down. There's no body. There's no me, but I felt just like me. And my first thoughts was, wow, this must be heaven. The whole Bible, Jesus, God thing, it's really true, because I'm not dead in a coffin like I pictured death. I'm somewhere. I don't see anybody yet, but I'm somewhere, and I'm here. And I just went through space. I'm up. That's what we think of heaven, is way up. And so here I am. I'm like, wow, it's all real. And I said, if you were praying and you talk to God, it's just like that. It's, God, you need to send people back so they can tell people it's real. Send some back. They have no idea this is real. If people knew this was real, maybe they would change. Maybe things would be different. Like, people need to know that this is real. And I had this split moment. Like, I had not yet ever been in New York City yet, but I seen like this sidewalk, like I was on the bottom of the sidewalk, and I seen like men's and women's shoes, like their legs going in their briefcases. And I'm like, this noise and this hurry. And I'm thinking, get out of this rat race, get in the woods, enjoy life. This isn't where you're meant to be. Or like, everybody's on the wrong path with these careers and all this competition. And then, so I just had these little thoughts while I'm hovering in this white space alone. And then I thought, am I going to be alone for eternity? Did I do something wrong I'm not aware of, that I would be alone for eternity? And I look around like I'm looking for somebody. And on my right, I see, in the bright white light, I see a slight outline of going up, arm and shoulder and head outline. And then I see a whole row of people standing, just the outline. And then my eyes scan, like I feel like I still have eyes in every body part. And I'm look, and I see a second row sitting up front of the standing. And then I focus on the one sitting up front and center, because I'm thinking that has to be God. Whoever's sitting front and center, that has to be God. And so now I felt like I had a complaint department. I like, hell no, I won't go. I don't want to be here. I got kids to raise. I can't be here. And I'm throwing this huge fit. And then this scenario opens up, this colorful scenario on my left, like a round kind of movie screen. But it was real. Like if you had just walked into a grocery store and the lady's checking somebody out, and there's a little boy standing there, and he's throwing this horrible fit about what he wants, and he wants it right now. And there was a mother and a father standing there, and the mother was more prominent in this than the other person. And she was like, no, you can't have that. And she was unaffected. And I believe was God's way of showing me as a young mother something I would understand. You're acting like a spoiled child. The answer is no. That I'm not going back. That this was my time. And so I thought, well, I got to try something else. And so here I am, still this orb, but somehow every time I remember it, I thought, I'm always seeing it from this other direction. I'm like this viewer of this orb, and I see a physical me straight across from me, and it's screaming out to God every abuse I ever went through as a child, to show him why I cannot leave my kids down there on earth without a mother's love and protection. I cannot have one thing that happened to me happen to my kids. And so I said, if you can show me my kids will be better off without me for whatever reason, I agree to stay. But if not, I beg to return. And I heard God's voice in a loving male voice, letting me know that I wasn't in control of this, that he was, and that I was like powerless. It was like I was at their mercy. And then I see this man stand over, and I just see him from behind, and I assume it's Jesus. And all of a sudden I see my body just join him, and we're together just like this, side by side. I don't stand and look at his face or anything like that. Like as soon as I go up and join him, we dip down, and instantly we're over the trailer of where we lived at the time. And it was in the future because my boys are down there. It's like all of a sudden the roof disappeared, and it's at night, and we could see, we would drop down closer, and my 3 boys are in there saying that my young boy, middle boy Jeremy, which would be young as my biological, he says to his older brother Matthew, he says, I don't care that you say mom is dead. I want her back, and I want her back right now. And I felt his pain so bad, I retracted. And now I'm in heaven in front of this panel, and I believe Jesus is now sitting beside God, which was on my right, which would be God's left, which isn't what the Bible says, but that's how it was shown to me. And the panel still just where you can barely visible see anybody's there, but I knew I was at Jesus' feet, and I was crumbled on the floor of heaven in front of Jesus' feet. And I see my hands come up from my face. So I have a physical body now in heaven, because I see my hands come from my face, and I say, who else will teach them about you? And then I'm back in the wheelchair. And I thought this never happened to anybody in the history of the world, was my exact thoughts. And I felt myself in the wheelchair, first come back my hearing. The nurse that was pushing me is now at the end of the hall, and she's talking to another nurse. And I'm thinking, they don't even know their patient just died. They're too busy socializing. That's what I thought. And then I felt my hearing come back. I felt this warmth go through my body. I felt my hands on the armrest, like I got contact back with my body. And something let me know, once you feel your feet on the pedals, the wheelchair, you're all the way back. And I waited, and I felt my feet. And I thought, how am I going? I felt like God sent me back to give me a chance to save my life. And the doctor examined me, and it was my doctor, happened to be on call. And he said, Peggy, your uterus is still intact. You didn't miscarry. You're still pregnant. Why do you keep saying it's a tubal pregnancy? I told you I did an ultrasound. Both babies are in the uterus. I could not tell him what just happened, how I knew that I was about dead here. Because by now, almost to the hospital, the pain was gone. Now that I come back from this near-death experience, I no longer have the nausea. I'm no longer feel like I'm going to pass out. I feel physically fine. But what just happened told me, girl, you're about dead. You got to make the doctor find out what's wrong with you. and I couldn't. So the only option I had was I refused to go home. And the doctor looked at me and looked at my husband. What's wrong with her? And I couldn't tell him. But I was not going to have my kids finding me dead. Just like I didn't want my husband finding me dead in the car. I didn't want to do that to my kids. I didn't want my husband go to work in the morning and my kids find my dead body. I won't do it to them. I thought I can't make my doctor figure it out, so I'll just have to die here. And so they put me in a private room, and husband went home, doctor went home. And all night I kept waking up with this pain in my right hip bone area. I would sit my bed up, get my blue bowl. I was going to be sick, and then wake up with vomit everywhere but my bowl. And my nurse kept getting mad at me. Use your bowl. I said, I think I'm passing out. I said, call the doctor. Something's wrong. She said, I'm not going to call and wake him up. And this kept happening all night. I kept passing out, waking up. I never had another NDE, but I knew each time I was dying. And after a few times, I said to God, I know you can't keep bringing me back. Please keep me alive till morning. Maybe my doctor will come in and find out what the problem is and save my life. I was on borrowed time. I'd already died. I shouldn't have been there. And I need my doctor to take me seriously, and he won't. So next morning comes and they put me in a wheelchair and I pass out. They put me in the bed. They got smelling salts all around me. The whole team of nurses around me. They take me flat down on my bed, ultrasound. The girl starts doing the ultrasound and her eyes get real big. She turns the screen so I can't see it. She jumps up, the chair falls backwards. She runs to this phone on his post. We're in the basement of the hospital. And she yells, Dr. White, stat, and runs out of the room. I think, I'm a goner. He comes in, does the ultrasound. He said, Peggy, it's the worst thing imaginable. He said, you got internal bleeding filling your entire abdominal cavity, clear up your chest. They called my whole family and said she's not going to make it. They put me in a private room to sign these papers because I was an organ donor. You know, instead of just running me right down the hall to do the surgery, they sent me up there. And I really think they wanted those organs. I was 25 years old, perfectly healthy. Okay. And I don't think they thought I could live with all that internal bleeding. I don't think they thought I'd make it through surgery. Maybe they didn't want me to die during the surgery. It'd be the doctor's fault or something. But they took me down to surgery then, and they obviously had removed the babies. One was in the uterus, one was in the tube, but it was stuck. Half in the uterus and half in the tube. That's why it looked like on the ultrasound that both babies are in the uterus. And at my 6-week checkup, my doctor said, you taught me to listen to my patients more than my machines. And just a few years ago, I took my husband with me to my yearly appointment, and I said, I've wanted to tell you something for 30 years. He said, well, better tell me then. Him and the nurse was standing there, the exam room. And I told him a brief version of my NDE and why I refused to go home that night. He said, I believe you. He says, all my years of practice, I have come to believe exactly what you're telling me. And the nurse says, oh, he does too. And when I was on Dr. Oz, he said, every time you passed out, you died. I assume because he's a doctor, he knew about internal bleeding and he knew the symptoms and the signs. I would watch I Survived and Back, which was about near-death experiences. And I started thinking, why am I so drawn into this? What is it about this that's just speaking to me? And I had read maybe one, maybe two NDE books, and just like nothing ever gripped me like that. And then we started getting used more to the internet, and I started watching some NDEs on conferences and speakers, and I thought, what a beautiful thing that would be to be able to tell experience. And I got thinking, was my experience in NDE, because it's so different and it was so personal, I still had it tucked so far deep in me that I wasn't talking about it to anybody. I hadn't found anybody really to talk about. And a couple of times, my husband, my adopted kids, and I got really emotional. And then what do? You just leave it alone. And then I found that there was an NDE group in our area 2 hours away, and I wanted to go really bad. And I finally went after months. And I'm going to say 2016, about 5 years ago. And I had emailed the group leader and told her I'd like to come to these. And I had an NDE because I was just realizing mine was an NDE. And in fact, 2014, I had found a website, it was NDERF, and it said, submit your story. And I typed that in so fast, like I didn't stop. And proofreader, nothing. I couldn't wait to hit send. And I thought, that's it. I told my story like I did something for God. Like, there, I did it. Oh, like that was my gratitude. There, I did it. I thought that was it. All I'd ever have to do. And but then, so I found this group and I emailed her and she says, you come and listen to the first speaker we have this month. And they do them every other month. And then the next time you tell your story. And so, well, okay. Like I'm a really shy person. But when I went and started telling my story and to this group, something happened. I was hooked. Something happens when I tell my NDE, when I talk about going through the tunnel and I'm hovering in the bright white light, all of it, I'm back there. And when you're back there, it's like you're picking up on, even though it's mentally, because we're not ever there physically, it's our soul. So like our soul's there again. And like we're touching that other realm. And it's almost feels like the light is coming right on my fingertips. I feel something magical. And the people in the audience stood in line, said, we just want to hug you. We can see the light. I want to touch the light. I want to feel the light. And I was on a high all day. Now, maybe it's some kind of speaker high, like somebody performs or something, but I didn't have to prepare, just like today. I don't have to prepare. I don't have to take notes. It's in my soul, and your soul is perfect. And I believe these experiences are soul experiences, and that's why they're so profound. That's why they're so unforgettable. And that's why they're like a gift that keeps giving. Like the older I get, I can understand these experiences. So there's just so much magic involved in these experiences that when we come back, it's hard to contain and it's hard to talk about and it's hard to find words. And you know how it sounds. That was a big deal when I first started talking about it. I thought, the words coming out of my mouth. How can this be coming out of my mouth? I'm not a person that fantasizes, that exaggerates and makes up stories. I'm a very factual, truthful person. But these words coming out, but they're my memories. And that I stopped denying them and allow them to come through. And how I come to write my book is, so I was going to these meetings at this place in Columbus, and I was getting really depressed. We were staying in a camper because my husband was working away. Kids all grown. I think I had some empty nest syndrome without the kids. And I was getting really depressed one day, and all of a sudden I had this vision. And it was of, like, I was above looking at me below, and I was bent over. I seen from me behind, and I'm going through this creek, and I'm picking up these bits of light as I went along in this creek. And it was like these bits of light. I think it was like my near-death experiences, my spiritual experience. I pick them up and look at them, observe them. And I grabbed my laptop. I started typing, and I didn't stop for 3 months, and my book was done. And the whole time I felt like someone was standing on the other side of my laptop, staying in there. And I was just to start from the beginning. And just like I was telling this one person, and I wasn't going to publish. That wasn't me. I was like bad with spelling and grammar and all that stuff. I was going to put it away in a drawer and tell my kids, give it to my grandkids when I go. But when I was done, the leader of the group, I had mentioned it to her. In fact, I showed it to her. It was in this binder with this picture that I drew of a flower on the front. And she said, and so I said, this is my baby. She's, oh no, I understand. She emailed me after that. And she says, I want you to call my publisher. And I'm like, no way. And I did. And he's a former monk. And I told him when I first called, I said, it's not worthy. He said, it's worthy because you're worthy. And somehow those words healed me on the spot. And it made me feel like I had as much right to tell my story as anybody else. And so it ended up being published. Jody Long from Near Death Experience Research Foundation endorsed my book, which is where I had first submitted my story. And right after I submitted my story to the NDRF, Jody Long had emailed me, and she was writing a book. Out of all those thousands of stories, she picked mine And there was only 16 stories they picked. Mine's chapter 14. It gave everybody, the common person, no matter where they live in the country, I send a Zoom link and they're on and they can share their experience. And I just love it.